Veronica, you seem really passionate about this project, and I would love to know more about the details of how and why you put it together.
There are several reasons why I decided to put this project together. Since 2012, I kept hearing this buzz term at conferences, one-to-one classrooms. As I navigated workshops, I heard many successful stories from educators going one-to-one. But at the time, I had no idea what that meant, much less what a one-to-one classroom looked like. I had to inform myself about this fascinating shift in education. So I attended many EdTech conferences where I asked a lot of questions. I quickly realized that there are infinite ways to use computers to facilitate learning.
It doesn't sound like you had a lot of direction or support from anyone.
During the 2011 and 2012 school year, I collected old cell phones from friends and fundraised for tablets. I used the devices for students to listen to audiobooks. Slowly, I started to download apps for student use, like a dictionary and a thesaurus. It became apparent that students were incredibly engaged and focused when they had access to a tablet. I knew that if I could get a laptop in the hands of each student engagement and focus would soar through the roof.
And that does seem to happen when students are given devices for learning. They get excited.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind is the management of these devices. Okay, that's challenging. Let's talk some more about that.
I knew I was ready to manage and handle a class set of laptops. For years, I had experimented with technology in the classroom, mostly as learning stations. So I had a vision for procedures and routines. I knew I had to train students exactly how to care for and to use the equipment. I was ready for the big jump from a few classroom desktops to a full class set.
Was there some kind of catalyst that helped motivate you to move full steam ahead?
As you may know, the state of California has switched to the Common Core state standards. So as of 2014, students will take the Smarter Balance computer-based standardized assessments. This means students must learn to navigate a computer to prepare for forthcoming standardized assessments.
Okay, so this did put a lot of pressure on everyone, you, schools, districts. You had a lot on your shoulders with all of this.
You are so right. You might be asking, well, how did she put this project together? There are many steps I took to ensure my students and I were prepared for such a change.
Can you break these down for us?
Initially, I did a lot of research to learn about exemplar one-to-one classrooms. I read teacher lesson plans and units, examined student work, and attended many EdTech conferences. They were key because I met many passionate teachers with lots to offer. I asked tons of questions and gathered resources like the top apps for classroom use.
I like that you started with what we could call research and development. You took that phase and then you went out and you learned from these top experts who are already doing what you want to do. The tools you've used and what worked for them is super important, as well as what didn't work for them. As teachers, we need to realize that we're not alone and that there's others out there that we can connect with. How did you determine what you would use and not use for your class?
I spent my weekends navigating new apps and software. This is a critical step. After each conference, I bookmarked all the apps and pages I was introduced to. On my own time, I learned how to use the apps, how to manage the apps, and thought about how such an app might or might not work in my class.
You make an important point here. We as educators also need to be comfortable with the tools we're going to use with our class. Having ways to learn on our own, attend conferences, or take courses like this one are super powerful, and they help us grow. I imagine after you had time to consider all the tools out there, you had some really tough decisions to make.
Definitely. Then came the hard part, to go Apple or not. After much experimentation with many Android and Apple apps, I quickly learned that some awesome apps are only available on specific Apple products. And some amazing Android apps only run on Android. I weighed all the pros and cons for each platform, and in the end, I went with an Android-based Chromebook because of its cost and function.
It really comes down to that personal decision-making process. I've heard arguments for both sides, and from what I can tell, that decision has to be weighed by the individual, the school, or district. There isn't going to be a perfect solution, so having a list of pros and cons is going to be key.
Once I made up my mind to go with a Chromebook, I began fundraising. As I mentioned in a previous episode, My project was successfully funded thanks to so many generous donors, including family, friends, and colleagues, and others via a crowdsourced funding site called donorschoose.org. In addition, I wrote many grant proposals and a couple were accepted. I used the funds to complete my class set of Chromebooks.
Veronica, this is an amazing journey. Let's take some time to break down your fundraising campaign.